Good evening and welcome to the overnight edition of From Day One. As always, Art Bell is ready to go with Nassim Haramain, part 2 of tonight's interview. So as we rock through Dominion, no further ado, here is Art and Nassim.
For those who don't know about it and want to do some heavy reading, your latest paper is called Quantum Gravity and the Holographic Mass. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. Is it published? Is it on the internet? Can they find it?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. You can find it on our site, or you can find it on the scientific journal site where it was published. It was peer-reviewed there in an open peer review, so you can even read the peer review comments.
Way to go.
And it is, it is unconventional, of course.
Yes.
However, a lot of evidence is emerging that supports this view. And, the math is the math is the math. And when it does good prediction, I'll give you another idea is that, in some 2 decades or more of string theory trying to be pushed forward to unify physics,
yes,
not one single prediction was made that could be verified in the laboratory. Not one single prediction. Yet this theory, within months of being published, produced a very, very important prediction. And so it's very compelling. And it's really simple. That's the crazy part about it. And that's some of the criticism I get is that it seemed too simple.
Well, some of what Einstein produced turned out to be pretty simple and short too, right?
Exactly, and it's commonly known that typically when a simple and beautiful solution is found, it's the correct one.
I'm told that the final solution someday, and that which people in your in your line of work pursue, is this theory of everything that some say may turn out to be no longer than your thumb.
Right, exactly. That when we find a unified view of not only physics but literally everything,
yes,
it would be beautiful and simple, and it would make sense, right? And certainly string theory is not that. It's very complex. And it predicts things that are not really useful. For instance, you could,
I interview frequently the man who was, I guess, co-author of the string theory. I guess Michio Kaku, professor.
Yes, absolutely.
And I frequently interview him, and so let's talk string theory a little bit. You say it's not. It predicts things that don't make sense, or?
Well, the result of string theory is unclear, meaning there's 10 to the 400 and some or 86 different ways of compactifying the strings. There's not, it doesn't give you clear answer. It's extremely complex. It's written in 10 or 11 dimensions. And it doesn't really give us a clear picture of how this universe is producing all this material world that we live in, and certainly it says nothing about how consciousness emerged from it. And so, a lot of theorists in the last few years have been turning away from string theory because it seems like it's lacking elegance.
I've heard that that some are turning away from it. What about the multiverse theory that seems to go with the string theory? Do you think the whole concept of multiverse existence collapses without string theory being so, or is there some way in which you can see multiple dimensions?
Yeah, I think that the multiverse can remain, but it becomes much less esoteric in terms of the way it's functioning. It's more mechanical. It makes more sense. That is that our universe is most likely not isolated, is probably part of a larger universe, which is part of a larger universe, which is part of a larger universe again, and so on. So it's more like fractal universes instead of parallel ones.
I can embrace that idea as well. I can see that. It goes from the very largest to the very smallest.
Very smallest.
Yes.
That's right. And when you look at the bubble we call our universe today, and we have some idea of its radius, and you put the mass that we observe in our universe in it, our universe obeys the exact quantity or the exact density of a black hole.
In other words, all the rules are followed.
That's right. And so if our universe is a black hole, most likely the material stuff we see in it are mini black holes as well, and so on. And so basically it's kind of scales of black holes from infinitely big to infinitely small.
All right. I'm going to venture all over the place, and I'm just going to ask you about this. And you're from Switzerland. The CERN devices, Super Collider, the big mama, they're really cranking it up. I think they're taking the voltage way, way up. And I've asked a number of people about this and would like to ask you, is there any possibility, in your opinion, of danger with what they're doing?
That's a complex question. I think in general, no. I think in general, what they're doing is, it's colliding proton at very, 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 very high velocity with each other. Now, if my theory, and, I was invited to present, when I made this prediction, I was then shortly thereafter invited to present my paper at CERN, which was canceled promptly by the director. My predict, if we take my theory and then we apply it to what's going on at CERN, it's probably not the best idea to collide little protons together.
No.
If they're all connected, we're probably sending shockwaves.
No, wait a minute. See, I just said, is there any possible danger in what they're doing? And now you seem to be, after saying no, describing possible danger.
Well, it's probably creating some noise on the structure of space-time that may not be the best thing to do. Is it endangering our health directly and so on? I think the effect is so minimal that we don't necessarily experience it. But I would say that even
all right, let me ask you this. Is your only concern for the poor little colliding particles, or is there a possibility that something else might occur in the continuum that all of us might not like?
I think it could be, absolutely. But I don't think we're any close to the energy levels I would require to do something very, very dramatic. I think those energy levels are way above what the standard model predicts. Just because of the way the equations I wrote are set up.
Okay, again, I'm not a physicist, but, little things can make big bangs, and we know that. And so if we collide the wrong thing with the wrong thing at the wrong speed, you couldn't exactly say there's 100% no problem, because we're off into territory that we don't understand fully, right?
Exactly. And certainly, even in the standard model, there's an outside possibility of creating, an entity that wouldn't be a healthy thing to have around.
Wait. Entity?
Well, I meant it in terms of a particle, a black hole.
On this program, you have to be careful about saying entity.
I'm sorry. But it will, like I said, the energy levels are not there. I would be more concerned. I am actually more concerned about the the electromagnets in the device being so strong, and their influence on the electromagnetic field of the Earth and the ionosphere and so on. Because
I have never heard anybody say that. I've never. They are obviously very, very, very strong magnets, right?
Exactly, and it creates a very high
magnetic force
in that region, which the Earth's magnetic field is influenced by. And actually, I'm more concerned about that than what they're producing inside the accelerator.
I recently heard that our magnetic field, Nassim, is weakening significantly. Yes?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's been spotting, which is typical of what we've observed from records in the lava of the beginning of magnetic pole shift. And so there is a weakening of the magnetic field, and there's spotting that's occurring. And spotting is like when if you're in the north hemisphere, all of a sudden there's little spots of south polarity, showing up and so on. And so and the poles are drifting significantly as well. And all of those things are indication of magnetic pole shift.
How about the word precursor? Precursors to a pole shift.
Right.
See, now you are the second person, Nassim, to say that to me in 2 days. Hold it right there. Just stand by. We're going to take a break. Second person to say that in 2 days. Pole shift. Doesn't sound good, does it? Doesn't sound good to me anyway, at all. Pole shift. North and south, south versus north. Yeah. Who knows what the plates do? You're listening to Midnight in the Desert. And we left it at pole shift. I'm coming back to consciousness eventually, but pole shift. When you hear pole shift from two people in 2 days, and you start thinking about it drifting and doing all kinds of precursor things that people are talking about, I can't resist asking you, Nassim, about the possibility of a pole shift. If that were to occur, and frankly, we're overdue for it.
Mm-hmm. That's right. We're overdue.
Yeah,
we know that it's flipped many, many times before.
Right.
From records in the lava where the particles align to the magnetic field of the Earth. So we know it's flipped a bunch of times, and we seem to be overdue for one. And the way the magnetic field is behaving right now seem to be suspiciously confirming that we're about to have one.
Well, let's say we have one. Let's say we have a pole flip. What do you believe we can expect? We humans can expect, the animals of the planet, perhaps the mammals, the fish, the birds, and then of course, us.
They could be significant disruption, that as a result of a magnetic pole shift, many of our technologies would be disrupted. The way birds navigate, the way some of the marine mammals navigate and so on, could be very much disrupted. And, it could have some significant impact on our civilization. Just because our civilization is technically and technologically very much tied into the expecting the electromagnetic field and magnetic field of the Earth to be stable and to be polarized in a certain way.
We definitely depend on it, yes.
That's right. But I think overall we would survive the event quite well. You can think of it as our sun, for instance, which is some 99.8% the mass of our solar system. Every 11 years, our sun flips its poles. Some people may not be aware of that.
Well, it's true.
And we don't experience huge impact from that, either than the sun becomes very active and throws out sun flares, and if we were hit by one of those sun flares directly, could be catastrophic for the Earth.
Well, here's the thing. Let me just interject. We do have the magnetic field, which is exactly what protects us from those sun flares, right? So if it gets really, really weak before it decides to do its flip thing, and there's a big sun flare, it'll cook us alive, literally.
Yeah, it could be a big problem. For instance, if it got really weak, even without a big sun flare, just from galactic cosmic rays and radiation from the sun and all this, it could be a big problem.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Fortunately, perhaps fortunately, as I mentioned last night, because we talked about this last night, we're having a minimum. According to the scientists, we may enter a period where there'll be absolutely no sunspots at all, the moderate minimum. And that could go on for a number of years, and one has to wonder if whoever's watching out for us, I hope there's somebody, has decided if we've got to have a flip, let's have low sun activity, right?
Yes. Well, that's, convenient. It certainly is. I think, Art, at the end of the day, what we're getting to is that eventually we have to learn to fly. I like to think of it that way. We have to learn.
We have to learn to fly?
Yeah, we have to learn exactly what is a gravitational field and how to modulate it so that we can actually live in space and not on the surface of a planet. Because surfaces of planets are very unstable. They can get disrupted by many different sources, like a meteorite large enough, a comet coming by too close, a sun flare, and so on. And, I think planetary systems are like little incubators. They're good for a little while, but eventually you got to learn to fly, just like a bird in a nest. and get out of the nest before the next hurricane, you know?
Fly, little bird, now, or you die.
Yeah, and I'm not the only one saying that. For instance, Stephen Hawking for years have been saying we have to learn. We have to figure out a way to colonize other planet or live in space. And all that cannot be done using fossil fuels in rockets. And so we have to learn how to use gravity.
How to really fly.
Yeah.
Again, I hearken back to Michio Kaku, Professor Kaku, and here's something he said. Maybe you agree on this one. He said that right now we are a type 0 planet, or civilization, if you will, and that, in his opinion, though he's up the chances a little bit, I asked him what are the chances of our surviving here on Earth if we don't find a way to get off the planet, and he thinks we really need to get off the planet just like you do. He said the odds of surviving if we don't get off the planet are really tiny. In other words, we'll end up with either ruining the planet, blowing ourselves up, or whatever.
Yeah, actually, I think we're living in grace. I'm just amazed we're still here to talk about it, like considering all the stuff that could happen that could wipe us out. It doesn't actually take that big of a meteorite to lose usable atmosphere and so on. And so it really is remarkable we're still here, but I think we shouldn't push our luck.
Well, Nassim, I've noticed something, and that is the scientists sort of try to reassure us by saying, well, they're looking for these things.
Yes.
However, you may have noticed that many, many times you see a newspaper article that says something, or a broadcast that says something like, yesterday, the Earth had a really close call. Well, so that means nobody noticed this thing was coming. Had this thing hit us, we'd be in big trouble. So too many times they find out about it after the fact.
Yeah, that's why they're recruiting groups of amateur astronomers everywhere on the planet to keep looking for these things. It's not obvious to be able to track these objects in the space of our solar system is very large, and by the time we see it might be too late. So it's remarkable, like I was saying, that we're still here. But I think more prominently is that we have to be able to understand gravity, and this is why I've been pushing so hard in this last 30 years to try to find solutions that would give us a better understanding of gravity, how it works, and to apply those in laboratory to see if we can modulate gravity. And I've worked in laboratory for the last 15 years on this, and the equations I wrote tells us that gravity is a little bit different than what Einstein described.
Can I stop you there? You used the term modulate gravity. Oh, my. That is very, very interesting. Modulate, for example, folks, modulation, think of it like this. A radio wave is silent. It is there. And then once modulated, it has intelligence on it. And that's how you hear it come out of your radio. It's a modulated wave. So you're talking about modulating gravity, and then, as you pointed out earlier, we could fly. Is it in your view? You've thought a lot about this, obviously. Can we really modulate gravity?
Absolutely. I'm convinced we can. Just as we learn to modulate, as you were mentioning, the electromagnetic field, and pretty well all of our civilization came out of it. We learned that, we can use magnetic fields to produce electricity. We learned how to use the electromagnetic field as we got a better understanding of it. I think that the next step for civilization will be to learn how to interact and use the gravitational field and power our civilization out of it, and actually become a civilization that live in space, and that comes to the surface just to enjoy the garden that the Earth is.
Well, if what you say is possible, that would really mean that you could be in a small craft, begin modulating in some way that would, in essence, repel you from the Earth, and you could, if you wished, at the speed of your choice, rise until you left the atmosphere and were in space. You wouldn't have to be launching rockets and spewing chemicals everywhere and really...
Exactly.
Right. So I was going to ask, is that how it could work?
Yeah, absolutely. You can think of it this way. It's like if you were to create a gravitational field,
yes,
strong enough above your head, eventually it would start getting sucked towards it. And if you were holding a device in your hand that's creating that really high energy gravitational field above your head, and you got sucked towards it, that point would move with you because you're holding the device. So you kept on getting sucked towards it. You would accelerate in that direction.
I would have thought it would be the other way around. In other words, gravity is what holds our feet to the ground. So if you were modulating gravity, would you not modulate it so that it pushed you away from the source of gravity that holds our feet to the ground? You said toward it.
Yeah, you can think of it the other way around as well. You can think of it as the depression that's occurring above you is creating a push below you that's pushing you away from the gravitational field of the Earth, for instance.
All right.
But if you continue to create this depression, and there's such a thing that just kind of made the media in the last few months called the EM drive, which is a little can that was discovered and invented by a very good physicist in England that kind of violates the laws of motion in the way we think of them today, but basically creates a little bit of a depression inside a closed can. It's a little cone of copper that has microwaves in it,
right.
And it's got more microwaves in the front and less in the back, and all of a sudden it starts moving. It propels itself, and it's not propelling against anything. It's not outputting any electromagnetic field or gases out the back end. It's just creating enough of a gradient in the structure of space that it starts to move towards a certain direction. And so some of the stuff that's emerging now that's confirming some of what we just discussed.
Wait. Let's see if I can understand this. You're suggesting that what has been done is that somebody has sort of created, could it be described as a hole in front of the object that causes the object to move toward that? Is hole a wrong word?
It's more like a depression.
A depression,
a
okay.
Gradient.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so
exactly.
So scaled up, one could imagine a craft.
That's right. And this is why NASA has been testing this drive and got positive results from it.
NASA has been testing this drive?
Absolutely. NASA has been testing this drive. A gentleman called Sonny White at NASA that's running a specific program in which NASA is trying to produce a warp drive. Came across the EM drive, which this physicist, which was an excellent physicist, couldn't get anybody to test because many scientists said this violates the laws of motion. It's impossible. So it's got to be a hoax. So nobody would test it. Finally, it took him years, like some 10 years. Finally, the Chinese tested it with positive result, and now finally NASA tested it with positive result. And it does what it says it does. It does produce thrust without expelling anything off the back end. And this is why physicists said it violates the laws of motion, that if for any action you have to have a reaction or the other way around. Yeah. And so, but when the NASA, and this is really important, when NASA published the result of their test,
yes,
they mentioned very clearly in the abstract of the paper that most likely what this drive does is that it's pushing against the vacuum fluctuations at the quantum level. And here we are right back to some of the equations I wrote that describes matter in that way.
Okay, please repeat. NASA said
that basically what happens is that the density gradient, the change in density from the front of the cone to the back of the cone of this little drive, is creating a flow in the structure of space-time, in the fluctuations of the vacuum at the quantum level around it. You can think of it as like a fluid.
Well, there's no minor matter at all. In fact, if you were in space, you would just, check me if I'm wrong here, but if what you say is true, you would continually accelerate, right?
That's right.
Oh,
so,
well,
but if you're pushing against the quantum vacuum, you see, because that's even in space where it seems like there's nothing, at the very fine level, there's all this energy that's present in the structure of space-time itself. Actually, we can't find anywhere where there is not this electromagnetic energy. And what NASA said, and it's very significant.
Could it be dark matter?
Yeah, dark energy.
With Art Bell, please coordinate your phalanges and call 1-952-225-5278. That's 1-952. Call Art.
Nassim Haramain is my guest, and wow, we're into some pretty interesting territory here. He's a theoretical physicist. You can look him up. You can read his papers if you wish. But some of what we're talking about, absolutely priceless if one of these days, as he feels, we're going to have to learn to fly. So here you are once again, Nassim. Thank you. This will be a fairly short span we've got here before the bottom of the hour break. But anyway, this incredible drive, is it fair to call it a drive? It could be a drive, right, for space travel?
Absolutely. It produces trust. And although it's producing very little thrust right now, it is producing some, considering that only very little wattage of energy is put in the drive. With more energy, of course, more thrust. Mm-hmm. And, it is definitely the beginning of realizing that we may be able to interact with the structure of space-time and produce gravitational effects. There's another fellow, for instance, in the University of Finland, Eugene Poklaknov, that has succeeded in creating a gravitational beam that propagates at some 64 times the speed of light. And that's published in peer-reviewed journals as well. And so what I'm saying here is that, we're not that far. People would think, oh my God, this is going to be like generations from now. I think it's actually imminent that we will be able to modulate gravity and control it.
Imminent is a really good word. And that really, I mean, you're right. It's the only way that we could move masses, if we had to or wanted to, from point A to point B. Also, if we were able to, I guess I'm going to ask this, if we were able to modulate gravity, how effective would it be, Sim, way out, for example, far from Earth? It's not, is it or does it or does it not depend on its ability to repel from Earth's gravity, or once out in deep space, could you just accelerate endlessly?
Oh, absolutely, because space-time is everywhere, and so basically what you're doing is you're warping the fabric of space-time. You're kind of creating a funnel, just like maybe a little bit a propeller on a motor of an airplane or in a boat motor is creating a depression, even either in the air or in the water, to create a force moving in a certain direction. You're basically doing that with the fabric of space-time wherever you are in the universe.
Okay, well, you heard me earlier, Nassim, mention what they're calling Earth 2.0, Kepler 452b. It is 1,400 light years from Earth. Now, to even in your wildest imagination, to think about getting to Earth 2.0, you would have to travel many times the speed of light to ever even imagine getting there in a single lifetime.
Right.
Is what you're suggesting with modulation of gravity something that would begin you on a trip that would get you there in some reasonable amount of time?
Yeah, this brings us back to the beginning of our conversation about wormholes, because if you're able to warp space-time, and this is what some of the fellows at NASA are working on, if you're able to warp space-time into a wormhole,
right,
then all of a sudden you could transfer the information across the universe extremely, almost instantaneously, as we were discussing.
Yes.
And you could be there, in a few seconds, with no jet lag. So yeah, I mean, all these technologies that are being developed now, and some of these effects that we're now starting to realize are occurring. And I want to mention, Art, that all these effects have to do with spin. And that's why I use the analogy of a propeller. And this is what was really missed earlier on, and that I believe is the key, is that spinning electromagnetic field at high velocity can produce these warps in space-time and open these wormholes. This is really becoming reality now. It's not just in the theoretical realm. Some of these devices are starting to show these effects.
Do you know some of the wildest stories that anybody's ever told? Things like the Philadelphia experiment involved spinning things.
That's right.
You're aware,
electromagnetic fields.
That's right. You're aware of those stories, right?
Absolutely.
So you're suggesting there could be a real basis for. I mean, it's not so. There's an old story, so
right.
A new theory, an old story.
Exactly, and it's just like this. Einstein described gravity as the curvature of space-time, and I don't know if we have enough time in this section, but I'm just gonna start on it. Imagine that, let's describe it this way. Typically, it's described as a surface of a trampoline that you put a ball on it, and it curves the trampoline so that it curves the surface so that another ball would appear to be attracted to the first one. Right?
All right, pick right up when we're done with the break. Relax. You've got a few minutes to relax. I love this stuff.
Wanna take a ride? Exclusively on the Dark Matter Digital Network. This is Midnight in the Desert with your host, Art Bell. To call Art, please dial 1-952-225-5278. That's 1-952-CALL Art.
Don't worry, everybody. We're going to get the lines open here at the top of the hour, maybe even earlier. I promise. I know when I get a really good guest and I get all wrapped up, it's hard to let go. But we will do that. We'll get the lines open, I promise. My guest, of course, is Nassim Haramain. And he is brilliant, absolutely brilliant. We're talking about modulating gravity, a drive for getting to another place in space that we could conceivably call home if we had to. All right, so I get messages in, believe it or not, something called the wormholes. I'm doing a program. They send it on the computer and it comes blasting over here from Arizona. Lasha says, how can you create gravitational depressions in space if there's no gravity in space? It doesn't make sense to me.
Right. Well, there's gravity everywhere. For instance, our solar system is stuck in the gravitational field of our galaxy.
Yes.
And we know that our galaxy is part of a larger cluster.
Yes.
And that cluster is part of a supercluster. So there's gravitational fields everywhere, and space-time, the fabric of space, which produced the gravitational effect, is everywhere. There's no place where there's no space-time. And so, modulating space-time or curving space-time or warping space-time anywhere you are will produce gravitational effects. And if you're controlling those, you can make it so it propels you in one direction or another.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Continue. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I, before the break, I was saying that, like, and the problem, and that's known, is just the problem has been that the idea that we could curve space-time strong enough to produce such an effect has always been thought to be impossible because the amount of energy it would take to curve it. And so the example I was going to give is that, Einstein, and that's maybe just because of the way we describe gravity, meaning that Einstein described gravity as this curvature of space-time, just like a ball on a trampoline curving the surface.
Right.
I like to use a different analogy. Think of you being in your bathtub with a rubber ducky and and pulling the plug. And so you got this little vortex that's being created near the drain because there's a little gradient there. There's this density change. The air is coming up, the water is going down, and if you look on the surface of the water, it looks like it's curving towards a drain. And if you put your rubber ducky close enough,
he's going to die.
He's going to start orbiting and act very much like the way we think of gravity.
Right.
But and so what Einstein described is very much that curvature that you see on the surface producing the gravitational effect. And that, demands tensor equations, and it's very complex. But what I found is that you can describe the same effect, get the same result, get the same math, except instead of describing the curvature, you describe the water molecules spinning, making the vortex in the first place, which is more fundamental. The curvature on the surface is kind of a secondary effect. The source of the gravitational field is actually all these little Planck fluctuations spinning together, producing that effect. And so the key word here is spin. So all of a sudden, you start to realize, wait, I might be able to curve space-time, not by creating this massive energy event, but just by getting space-time to spin.
All right. Have you ever heard the name Bob Lazar?
Absolutely.
All right. My friend Rossi sends me a message saying the electromagnetic drive is almost exactly what Bob Lazar described to you so many years ago. He talked about the sport ship drive on the UFO at S4, which used a depression of gravity in front of it, pulling it forward.
That's right. Yeah, that's correct. And many people that had some of the people that had these experiences, or and that's gonna sound pretty esoteric, but even the people that have been taken on spaceship by maybe another civilization,
yes,
describe these spinning magnetic fields or spinning electromagnetic events. And even when you look at some of the footage in modern time of some of these so-called UFOs or flying objects that we're not sure where they come from or how they get here, very commonly we see kind of the object wobbling in space. When it slows down enough, we see it like it almost looks like it's a little unstable.
That's right.
And that's called precession. And it's very much the result of spinning things. It's a gyroscopic effect. When you're spinning things, you can think of a top that you're spinning, those toys from when you were a kid.
Right, as they slow, they wobble.
Yeah, as they slow, they wobble. That's called precession.
Very good.
And so you can imagine that a ship that's using spin in the electromagnetic field to propel themselves by curving space-time, when they slow down and stabilize,
got it,
or they slow down the drive so much that it starts to wobble just like a top.
Jacob says, if modulating gravity was possible one day, would it be possible to bend the space fabric to the point you could actually create a wormhole?
Absolutely. And this is what Sonny Whites and those folks at NASA are actually working on, because the math is very clear and straightforward that you could eventually create enough curvature to produce a wormhole and connect very distant places in the universe and travel instantaneously. It's very real. And as I was saying at the beginning of our interview, this might be actually occurring in nature all the time, even at the subatomic level, so that particles that are entangled are actually connected through wormholes.
Good. Back to entanglement. I want to come back for a moment to mass consciousness, because I really want to ask about this. If everything is connected, then mass consciousness really does, or the possibility of it really does make sense to me. Have you looked at the experiments done at Princeton and for example, as they monitored around the world with these so-called eggs, which are actually just computers spitting out random stuff, it just spiked through the roof before the 9/11 business, and then they have many other examples of spikes that occurred. And this claims to be looking at mass consciousness, at some sort of something, and here's the real wild part of it, that occurs before whatever it is that's going to happen, like 9/11, something really big. It occurs before it, which implies some sort of twist in time or knowledge of what's going to happen. I don't really know what it fully implies, but it fascinates me.
Yeah, it not only is it instantaneous, it seems like the communication is even so past the speed of light, to the point where it's a precursor, and you can actually, you could think of it that the events that we experience in our everyday life is actually a little bit slow compared to the underlying reality that's occurring. By the time we experienced it, it's actually, already passed by a few seconds.
Okay.
And so these eggs are actually, which are random generators that are all around the world network, that are supposed to be, spitting out random numbers. All of a sudden, when we have very significant global events, that range from global meditations, by the way, to very dramatic events like 911. These generators start acting weird. They start to output coherent data, coherent spikes, and like you were mentioning, the spike starts to move towards higher levels of coherency prior even to the event occurring. And so
some kind of rift in space-time. It's really weird.
Yeah.
All right, here comes a big one.
Just on that subject, or just one more.
By all means.
What's really cool is that some of these experiments are done as well with individuals trying to influence the random generators, and that's been shown to be very effective. With your consciousness, you can influence a computer that's outputting random numbers.
That's a fact. That's a fact. As a matter of fact, they turned out a little program that allowed you to do exactly that. It would sort of, you could get any background you wanted on the computer, and as you concentrated, you tried to manifest this picture to become solidified in front of you on the screen. If you didn't concentrate on it, it would go back into the noise. And I experimented with that, and I'm telling you, it really works.
It's remarkable, and it supports the concept that you're connected even to a computer.
Exactly.
You know, and so it really kind of starts to land that, wow, we're really connected to this material world around us.
All right. Before we ever get phones here, I really want to ask you if you believe that travel in time, will actually ever become possible in either direction?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a really good question, and it could take a long time to answer because we would, as well, like the concept of time might be erroneous the way we think about it. But just to give the standard answer would be that it's not precluded from Einstein field equation, meaning that even the standard model of physics predicts that time can be manipulated, and that we should be able to travel in time. It might sound a little mind-boggling, but when we actually start to modulate gravity, we may end up modulating time at the same time.
That's the same one, yes.
Yeah, because it's space-time that we're affecting, and so. The thing is that the way I see it from the perspective of the work I've done is that when you change time, you change space as well. And so that you are actually in a different place, not necessarily, at a different time. So you might not be on Earth anymore, that might be on a parallel or a reflection Earth in space. But that's going down the rabbit hole.
It is. How about questions about life and death? In other words, is it your view that when we, human beings, die, that's it? Game over, nothing left? Or in physics, is there some way to, how can I put this? Imagine that something continues when we die.
Yeah,
absolutely. Really?
Yeah, meaning that we know for a fact that no information can be lost. And so if you think of yourself, well, first of all, it's important to describe what we call death, because basically when
Be my guest, describe death.
Well, because all we observe is just a change of state, meaning that all the atoms you were ever made of and all the atoms you're made of currently are still there. They don't go anywhere. They just change state. They change form. And so if you thought about it that way, even in a very physical way, nothing really was lost. There's just a rearrangement of the information. And so I particularly believe that, the information still remains, and that it's in a different form. And it's in a form that's not necessarily directly accessible from our perspective, from our experience every day. But I don't see why some people wouldn't be able to access it, or, that even technologically, eventually, we would be able to access it. If the information is in the structure of space.
If I'm hearing you correctly, you're talking about accessing information from people that, from our perspective, have died.
Exactly. That information is still present, and it may still be coherent.
What is that going to take? A quantum computer?
Yes, a quantum interacting device that is tapping into this field of information I was describing earlier. That's called the vacuum fluctuation that makes up everything we see and don't see, according to what I found.
Wow. You have given me so much to think about. Holy mackerel. All right. Zim,
It's mind-boggling, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. You're in the mind-boggling business, no question about it. Nazim, give me a moment. We're going to take a break, but before we do, I wanted to, because we're a new show, I want to describe to people how to call. So hold tight. We'll be back with you after the break, and we will be taking calls. So here's the deal, folks. You know the phone number, the public phone number, right? It's area code 952-225-5278. That's 952-225-5278. That's an easy one to call. But then we've got ways you can call from all over the world. North America and Canada, folks, you have got your own window to get in and ask a question. How can you not have a question after all of this? It's Skype, and what I'm suggesting to you is that you put Skype on your phone. If you've got whatever phone you've got, a smartphone, put it on your phone. And the way you set it up is, if you're in North America, Canada, whatever, go like you're going to make a new contact and put in simply, and it's not case sensitive, just put in MITD 51. MITD 51. And then you'll find that in your list, and you can...
And we're going to leave Art there. No reason to explain when we're going to have to leave him for the night, as time in Dominion has drawn to a close. As always, please like, share, and subscribe. Get us to the goal of 50,000 views, 1,000 subscribers. So Boxy over next year sends us those nice red packages, and YouTube will pay attention to us, put us on the algorithm and the like. CoinBase, Ibotta, and Gain.gg are available. Get your free money from them. You're also helping the show out at the same time when you do, to use here in Dominion or anywhere else you would like. Until tomorrow, please like, share, and subscribe. Be kind to one another, and release the Krakens. If you like what we did with the Chestapalooza in Part 1, please let us know so we can keep it up. If not, we can always return back to the original format as we march along here from day one. Have a great night and enjoy your night's rest. We'll see you tomorrow.